Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, David here, and welcome back to another Atlas and Metaphor ReFantazio video because I'm extremely excited for the game. I need to talk about it more, and I've heard a lot of people in my comment section saying that, hey, Metaphor is medieval Persona, it's too much like Persona, and even I sometimes watching, the videos that Atlas put out and everything, I thought to myself, is it too much like Persona? And that's the question that we're going to try to answer today. So if you're into that, make sure to click that like button. It's a big help. Otherwise, if you like weekly content on anything Atlas, Metaphor, and more, you're at the right place. Please consider subscribing. Now let's get right into it. So what I did is before I started recording this video, I rewatched all of the showcases that Atlas hosted for Metaphor ReFantazio, and I had in mind the topic of this video. So I had in mind Persona when watching these showcases, trying to spot all the similarities and differences to come up to a conclusion. So when you look at the first showcase that Atlas gave us, right, the introduction showcase, this is the one that gives us an idea and the most similarities as well as to how Metaphor can be similar to Persona, which to some people can be a good thing, to others it can be a bad thing. So they said one thing that really hooked me in that showcase, and that's what they did. Quote, "Most showcases don't have a time limit on the adventure, but Metaphor revolves around the concepts of dates and time. There are predetermined lengths for each activity that you can complete during your travels. You're free to spend your time as you please. You have a set time frame to complete the main story objective at each location you visit." And to me, that sounds like the calendar system in Persona, where if you, let's say, do a mini game, well, it's gonna spend time. If you go through a social link, you're gonna spend some time doing that. And in terms of your main story missions, that's also a thing. So right, in Persona, you have to, let's say in Persona 5, you have to steal the heart of Kaneshiro before X date. Otherwise, it's game over. You have that main objective, you have this much time to do it, spend your time however you want. You can rush through the main objective immediately, rush through that specific dungeon, and then move on to social interactions and minigames and subquests and everything. So that is what Persona does, and apparently Metaphor is doing something very similar. So this is the one element of the first showcase that really hooked me in terms of it being similar to Persona. Now, the second showcase was a very interesting one, my favorite one if you ask me, and it's because it's focused on archetypes, which are your Persona equivalent, if you can say that, right? So in Persona, all party members but the main character are stuck with one persona that can evolve and that obviously can change skills and everything, but it's that one persona. In Metaphor, all party members can be equipped with an archetype, which would be again the Persona equivalent. That being said, archetypes can be changed for all party members to offer a bunch more combat and party configuration options. Even in the showcase, they said it themselves. All party members can equip any of the 40 plus archetypes in Metaphor ReFantazio, which means that in terms of customization options, there's a ton in Metaphor. Is that going to change how you perceive a character, and is it going to change character development? To me, I don't think so, because they're focusing on the actual character, which is human, and you have archetypes that you can equip on them. I'm thinking something along the lines of, to me, this really sounds like Xenoblade Chronicles 3. If you played that, you have a job system that is basically that job system here. You can have this party member, Mio, for example, which is a great character that was well written, that they expanded upon with great character development, but you could change classes for your playthrough, right? It's pretty much the same thing here for Metaphor, again, from my understanding. It's also very different than Persona when it comes to the battle, because you have the standard press turn combat system. If you look at a trailer quickly, you're gonna say, okay, it's turn-based just like in Persona, right? It's the press turn combat system. It's the one more system. Well, if you think about it a little more, it's actually different. The actual turn-based combat system, even that alone, yes, is based off the turn-based combat system, but it's very different in a lot of different ways. Again, the fact that you can customize your party with archetypes is a big difference than what you'd find in Persona, where you have control of your main party member. You can swipe personas with your main party with your main character, but not the rest of your party members. In Metaphor, you can do that. There's also one thing that is really dope. There's a front row and a back row in Metaphor. So certain classes, like a knight for example, will perform better in the front row, while a healer or a supportive type of archetype will do better in the back row. So that is going to add to the strategy as well, and something that you're not going to find in modern Persona games, at least, because that was a thing in Persona 1, right? The original game. The way that you enter a battle is also very different in Metaphor versus Persona. In Persona, you're in the dungeon, boom, you smack an enemy, or a Persona demon on field hits you, boom, you're in your turn-based combat. In Metaphor, it's something that is very original that you're not going to find in Persona nor SMT. It's a hybrid between an action-based combat system and a turn-based combat system. So, if you see a lower leveled foe on the field, you can completely annihilate them with action-based combat, with sword attacks or ranged attacks if you have the right archetype to do so. So again, even with the action-based combat system, it's not just an hack and slash, right? With just a button masher, basically. You have different style of combat depending on your archetype before you enter a turn-based battle, because if the enemy on field is higher level than you, yes, you can damage them with the action-based combat, but you cannot completely destroy them. You must go through a turn-based combat. So I feel like this is going to make the game more fast-paced. It's going to appeal to action-based combat RPG fans and also to turn-based RPG fans, which to me is a bomb. It's awesome. Very good news in my opinion. And again, the fact that the action-based combat changes depending on the equipped archetype for your protagonist, that sounds freaking awesome to me. So that is again something that field combat in Persona is ass. And let me just say that it really is bad. In my opinion, it's really bad. It's not even the way that you hit an enemy, it's not fun. It feels clunky, especially in older games like Persona 4, for example. It's really rough in my opinion. They made it a little better in Persona 3 and 5, 3 Reload, sorry, and 5. But still kind of boring. I don't mind it because obviously the focus is on the turn-based combat system in Persona, which is really good. But in Metaphor, apparently you have complex action-based combat and complex turn-based combat, which, that is a good. In terms of dungeons though, from what I've seen, obviously in terms of the aesthetic and everything, it seems to be very different. But there seems to be large-scale dungeons for the main areas in games, the areas that are associated to a story bit, but there seems to be puzzles here and there, like, you know, minor stuff. Dungeons seem very similar to me from what I've seen. Now in the showcase number 3, which was focused on the story, it really told us that, hey, Metaphor is going to be completely different than Persona, right? It's going to be a different setting, right? In Metaphor, from what we've seen, it's completely different. No high school, no modern age either. It's completely different. It's set in a fantasy / medieval setting, and as the protagonist, you are basically in an election race to become king after the current king was assassinated. You decide to pursue the throne, and you will have to explore the whole world and meet with a bunch of different tribes to achieve that specific goal that you set for yourselves. Enemies are actually human in Metaphor, and overall the story just sounds very different in every single way. So yes, even though you have certain social interactions between party members, if you increase your bonds, you get access to a new archetype. Those are similarities, but if you ask me, with all of this in mind, Metaphor ReFantazio is doing its own thing. It's taking certain elements from both Shin Megami Tensei and Persona, to be fair, but is it too much like Persona? At this point, I'm ready to say no. I don't think it is. I think it's its own thing. It's taking stuff from Persona to make sure it's appealing to a wide audience, but not too much. It still seems to be very different, and it's nailing important stuff. It's not in a high school setting. It's not in modern day. You're not going to be exploring Shibuya again. It's going to be completely different setting, different place, no demons, no Persona from SNT and Persona, and that alone must not be underestimated. We're going to see brand new creatures, brand new designs, brand new personalities for all these characters, and that alone should tell you how much love and effort they're putting into Metaphor. Everything was built from the ground up for that game, and I know I sound like I'm simping, but it's my most anticipated game of the year, y'all, so please give me a chance. It looks very, very awesome from start to finish, if you ask me. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about Metaphor ReFantazio. What do you guys think on this topic? I think it's an interesting topic of discussion. I don't know what you guys are going to think of this one, but please tell me, do you think Metaphor is too Persona-like, or is it different enough for you to be excited for it? I'm aware that I'm speaking to mostly ATLUS fans here on the channel, but regardless, I want to have your opinion, and feel free to share the video around. That way we can have more opinions on the matter. Thank you all so much for watching. You have a great day, y'all. Bye.